Hello, everyone. Welcome to Jira for Marketers. This is the first time we're offering this, and so this is going to be the one of four. And so this is an entire four-part series. And today we're going to be focusing on processing and organizing work. Now, before we get started, in the chat, if you're already kind of watching, a few members are already putting in where they're tuning in from. So we got John Fung from Dubai. Carrie is coming in from Estonia. We got Amanda from Palm Beach, Florida. So if you want to participate and join in on the fun, why don't you let me know in the chat here where you're tuning in from? It's always such a blast and so much fun to see where all the different people of the world are in. Now, next up, if you are tuning in as a marketer, right? I want to know, are you currently using Jira for marketing? Or what is the marketing tool that you use today? Let me know in that chat as well. I'm very interested in just the different uses, the different types of tools and methods that people have when it comes to marketing. Now, I'm going to start with sharing my screen, and we're going to jump into some slides here. If you've never attended one of my live trainings, I have a slide where I'll introduce myself a little bit, but this should be fun. This is a little interactive, so we do leverage that chat quite a bit. And so if you want to interact or ask any questions or just flag something, just make sure you drop it in the chat. I might not be able to get to every question, but I will take little breaks here and there in the material to go and address some questions. Usually I have someone with me kind of helping me start the questions, but rest assured, whether it's in this video or in a follow-up video or maybe even next week, because remember, this is a four-part series and we're going to be coming back week after week after week for a total of 4 weeks. So make sure you drop your questions because, again, if we don't get to it today, we might get a chance to do it tomorrow or next week, I should say. All right. So let's jump into the material here and let's talk about Jira for marketers. Now, this is a very interesting, very exciting conversation for me because I'm usually talking about Jira from a very technical, very software-oriented perspective. And a few months ago, I had this dopey idea, and it just happened to mend well with that last one where we're like, why don't we try to talk about Jira for other types of teams, right? And not just software engineers. So today I'm going to be, hopefully, if I do my job correctly, building a compelling case as to why, if you're on a marketing team, Jira is the perfect tool for you. So here's what we're going to be learning today, right? So what are some of the communication, project management struggles in marketing? What is Jira? How can Jira help? I'll kind of introduce myself in the next slide as well, but a lot of this will make sense here. We're going to be understanding Jira for marketers. And then I'm going to go a little technical, not too much, but just enough to kind of give you some background, give you an understanding of how Jira works, how it's configured, how you can work with it to really tune it to what you need. And so we'll talk a little bit about some marketing specific configurations. So don't worry if some of these words don't make sense because that's why you're here, right? At the end, in 1 hour, my goal is to have you walk out of here as a Jira expert and really, really love Jira as much as I do because whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, I use Jira for 12 hours every single day. And so I truly, truly do love this tool. And I'm hoping to radiate that love to you as well. And then we are going to be in Jira and we're going to be capturing and organizing your work in Jira. Now, I've kind of been on the fence as to how I'm going to be teaching this because there's technically two types of audiences. I got Jira admins that are going to be helping their marketing teams. So maybe Jira is already established in your company and we just have an admin that is going to be interested in like, okay, so I know how to set up Jira for software teams, but how do I set it up for other teams, non-technical teams, specifically marketing teams? So I'm going to be kind of tailoring the conversation that way. But at the same time, I also have folks that are in marketing today, right? And so I want to also tailor the training for you so that you understand, not getting into the technical details of, hey, this is how simple it is to set up and use Jira. And so I'm going to be trying to balance both out. Now, you can help me do this a little bit easier. If you can just in the chat comment, are you a Jira admin or are you a person in a marketing team? Right. And so I'm very interested if you can just let me know in the chat, what camp do you fall under? It will kind of help me figure out where and how I have to tip the scale on this training. Now, while you're all doing that, let me give you a little bit of background from me. My name's Alex. The internet likes to call me Dr. Jira. I have probably what I like to think the biggest channel here on YouTube with respect to Atlassian content. I have almost 21,000 subscribers. So if you haven't smashed that subscribe button yet, and you're new to this channel, make sure you're smashing that subscribe button because it's going to be a very helpful button for you to hit, especially since this is all free and all you got to do is just hit that subscribe button. Most importantly though, because this is a 4-part series, you definitely want to hit that button because you're going to want to come back next week and the week after and the week after that to get the entire Jira for Marketers training material. So make sure you smash that button. I do have a master's in systems engineering, a bachelor's in computer engineering. So I do have a technical background by trade. I worked at really large companies like Boeing and Northrop. But most recently, I'm running ATech. And a lot of what I do is marketing. I have to market and build this brand that I have around ATech. And so this is why I decided I wanted to kind of share a different perspective, a different side of how I use Jira, because it's not all just software, right? It's not all just super technical, super engineering teams, right? Everybody can use Jira, and I'm just going to build a couple of compelling arguments as to how you can benefit from this. Now, feel free to scan that QR code. We are going to revisit it back at the end, but I do have a lot of different things that are available for you. So if you're new to APTech here, we'll have some fun. So, all right. So let's talk about some current struggles. I kind of always like to start things off with, what's the problem, right? Where are the pain points that we are suffering with or that we have, and how is Jira going to help us? So one of the first problems or pain points that I'm going to try to address is work intake. I think a lot of different teams, right? We live in this very dynamic, ever-changing requirement world where there's a lot of signals coming at us, right? There's Slack, there's Teams, there's email, there's people walking up to our desk. There's just a lot of inputs coming in as to somebody wants something from the marketing team, right? And so deciding what to work on, what's the priority, when's it due, where is this thing that you're asking me to do relative to all the other things that I have to do, that becomes a struggle, right? And Jira is what I'm going to try to show you today is going to be a perfect tool that's going to help you manage this work intake. Additionally, as marketers, we're not just, creating something out of nothing. We are usually working with some sort of an asset or an artifact or some sort of media because what we do is creative, right? It's a very tangible type of work. And so how do you track artifacts? How do you track the things that need to be done? How do you coordinate cross-functionally, right? Because sometimes you don't have all the information. Sometimes you don't have all the resources yet, and you are depending on other teams. And so there's a lot of cross-functional communication, accountability, and just a lot of cross-functional dependencies. And so I'm going to show you, again, throughout this entire series, how Jira helps you with all of that. And then finally, prioritization, right? What's the most important thing that needs to be worked on? What are the deadlines? What are the priorities? What are the dependencies? How do all the things that you got going on, how do they all line up? And how do you make sure that you're always working on the most important thing for you and your team? And so again, these are some of the struggles that hopefully at the end of this training, we'll be able to help you walk away with a little bit more confidence and a little bit more trust in Jira. And if you've never considered Jira before, make sure you sit down, make sure you put your seatbelts on because it's going to be a very, very exciting training here. All right. So what is Jira? Now, normally I don't spend this much time inside of PowerPoints. So I do have a couple of slides. So just do bear with me for a few more minutes. I assure you, we're going to be leaving this PowerPoint very, very soon. And we're going to go straight into Jira. But I just want to kind of set the stage, right? I want to level set some expectations so that when I do jump into Jira, you don't feel like you're drinking water from the fire hose. So what exactly is Jira? So Jira is traditionally a project management tool. Now, it's a project management tool, but really just think of it as a task tracker, but a very powerful one at that. And so it is infinitely customizable. And I'm going to be showing you how to do some customizations, how to use it, how to interact with it. And it literally works with any type of work. So it doesn't matter what kind of work you do. Even if you're not in the marketing team, it's going to work for every department in your company. You just need to know how to tweak it. And so I'm going to show you some of the tips that I do because I do this for a living. I spend my entire days configuring Jira for a variety of different teams, whether they're like business teams, marketing teams, executives, right? All kinds of teams. It's not just technical teams. And so I literally configure Jira and mold Jira so that it works for anything. And Jira does help teams communicate, be more accountable, and manage expectations. And as I mentioned a couple of times, it is super duper powerful. It's very easy to use, and it's a very visual tool. Sometimes you just got to know what you're looking for. And this is what I'm going to try to compel to you in this training. So how can Jira help? So we're going to talk about forms. They're going to help us capture critical information needed to help you do your job. We're going to show you some automation rules that help you assign work, send out reminders, prioritize work. We're going to integrate with some other tools such as Slack or Teams to bring Jira wherever you are, right? One of the priorities here is that you don't want Jira to get in the way. Jira just needs to naturally just interweave with your daily work. And so wherever you're at, Jira's going to be there. And then we'll talk about tracking time and effort for each task. Um, let's just jump into it. Actually, instead of just going through these slides, I kind of just want to jump into Jira. And in the chat here, before we get in there, how many of you have used Jira before? If you can just give me like a type in a number 1 if you have used Jira before. And if you've never used Jira before, type in a number 2 in the chat. That's going to help me understand how far back I need to start this training with. But I'm going to introduce you all to Jira here. So we do have a couple people that have used Jira. Awesome. So definitely not going to spend too much time with basics, but I'm just going to kind of walk you through a quick, like 30-second, what is Jira? Here's what Jira looks like, because apparently a lot of you all have used Jira before. So this is really, really good news. Really, really awesome. But here we go. We do have a couple of twos. So just for the benefit of those who haven't seen Jira before, let me tell you what we're looking at. So this is Jira. What I have on my screen here is Jira, and it's made by a company in Australia named Atlassian. And as I mentioned, it's a project management tool, right? But it's just simple. It's a simple work tracker, if you will. Now, there's different types of Jira, and you might have heard something like Jira Service Management. You may have heard of even Jira Work Management, Jira Software. Atlassian has been rebranding a lot of our Jira offerings. And so today, I'm happy to say that we just simply have Jira. And so we are going to be focusing on just Jira today, because Jira is the future. Jira is the tool, and it's the brand, it's the identity that Atlassian has gone with, and we're going to be focusing there. Now, within the context of Jira, there's a lot of different types of projects. And so think of a project as a house, right? This is where you and your team are going to come to collaborate. Now, Atlassian's kind of thinking a little bit ahead, right? If you've ever seen, or maybe you have some friends in the engineering department that have used Jira, you might have heard what I'll maybe flag as like horror stories, right? Because Jira is notably known as this big, scary monster that is just so infinitely customizable, and it requires a team of like 20 Jira administrators to maintain and manage, right? But that is the old Jira. In the new Jira, Atlassian has gone to great lengths to make Jira as easy and as flexible and as just not so scary as possible. And as you see here on the left-hand side, Atlassian has invested heavily into creating these templates, right? And think of these as like, if you're ever looking to buy like a new home, when you go look at those model homes that are already like pre-configured, so the architecture, right, the room setup, all that stuff is already pre-done. It's like already in like a container. That's what each of these are, right? So these are just different types of templates that already exist. And since we're in a marketing one, you may have guessed it, we're going to kind of be focusing on marketing. Now, when we look at the marketing offerings, you can see that there's quite a bit, right? There's different types of efforts that are happening with marketing teams. So I encourage you to come in here and look and see which one relates most to you. Because if you're just looking for a place to manage your activities for completing a project, then maybe the project management one is correct for you. If you're looking for a go-to-market campaign, maybe you want to do this go-to-market one. Maybe you just want content management. Maybe you're a content creator like myself. Yep, let me zoom in a little bit more. So maybe you're looking at your content, right? And you're trying to create a content management one. Well, that's going to be this one right here, right? But event planning, email campaigns, there's a template for all. I encourage you to explore the ones that are closest to you. But for the purpose of this training, I'm just going to pick the blank one, because I always like to start with a blank canvas. And I'm just going to call this one Marketing Jira Training. Okay. Now, there's a couple of other things that I want you to know that I just kind of want you to understand. In Jira, we have this concept of a team and company managed project. For you as marketers, you want to really focus on the team managed projects. This is going to give you the most control, but with the most safeguards. It's going to allow you to customize Jira and use Jira the way you need to use it without that overhead of needing an administrator. So this is going to work really well for you. Now, if you are a traditional Jira admin and you're trying to create a Jira project for your marketing team, then you might want to consider company managed, because this is going to allow you to like standardize. This is going to allow you to create templates, like project templates, so that all your marketing teams are using the same workflow. We have the same fields, right? We're having and we're utilizing and interacting with Jira in a very similar way. That's going to be your company managed. But for the purpose of this training, I'm going to keep things very, very simple, very easy, just very fluid. And we're going to stick with team managed projects. And don't worry about the rest of the details. I'm just going to jump into a blank project. So at this point, it's very blurry. We can't read your screen. Is anybody else having trouble reading the screen? Because usually I don't have this problem. It might be your internet connection, but let me know if anybody else is having this problem. I will try to go a little bit slower, see if the interface refreshes there for you. Anybody else having any technical problems seeing the screen here? We'll pause here for a second while I scroll up and read the comments here. So we got a few Jira admins, quite a few admins, couple marketers. All right. Okay, so we're seeing everything's a couple people are seeing okay, so I'm gonna keep going. Um, for those that are seeing a blurry screen, you might want to relocate. Maybe your Wi-Fi signal is not as strong, but I did zoom in, so hopefully it's all looking a little bit better for everybody. And I'm getting some thumbs up that we look good. So I'm gonna proceed with this training here. All right. So one of the first things that I want to kind of start talking about is that concept or the concept of work. Okay. So Jira, this is a Jira project. And as I kind of mentioned, it's a what we call a business type of project, and it's a team managed project. And all that means is that we're going to be able to customize everything that we need with no need for a Jira admin, right? So we can do everything ourselves. And this is really the really, really good news. If you are a go-getter and just want to customize your thing, you want to get started easily and quickly, it's not going to be so good news if you're used to being a Jira admin and you're used to kind of having a little bit more oversight, a little bit more governance, right? And so I do encourage you to kind of I do encourage you to use the appropriate template, whether it's company or team, based on your company needs. But again, just to keep things simple, I'm going with team managed. Now, in a traditional marketing team, right, we're going to be given just the very basics. So automatically, Jira is going to ship with these columns. And these columns are statuses, or they represent statuses in a workflow. And they're just the different states that the different activities that you're working on can be represented as. And in this training, I'm going to kind of focus a little bit on the setup, right? On like, okay, so we have a marketing team, but Jira is not really out of the box ready to go for us to go into marketing. And so one of the first things that I want to encourage you, right, that we want to look at is we want to be customizing Jira a little bit so that it's more appropriate for what the different types of work that we're trying to do. So one of the cool things that you can do is if you go to project settings up here, we have this concept of an issue type. Now, issue types are just different tasks, if you will, that your team's working on. Now, it may be appropriate that everything is just a task. If you want to classify everything as a task, you can. But maybe you have events, right? Maybe you want to track events. Well, you can click on this add issue type over here on the left-hand side, and then you can click on this create issue type, and I can create an event issue type, right? So I can go events, maybe it's an event like this, and I can change the icon. I don't have a whole lot of icons that ship automatically, but you do have the ability to add your own custom icon if you want. But I'm just going to pick this little couple lines here and just select that as my icon for events, right? And so maybe we also want like content, right? Like maybe I want to track different types of content. So I'm going to call this like a content piece. And again, I'm going to just change the icon. And maybe on that one, I want the little plus button, right? And so I'll do that and then hit create. And then that's basically all I'm going to do for this training, but you are just limited by your creativity here. So I encourage you to think about the different types of work that you're usually tracking, right? Whether it be social media campaigns, maybe you're doing some sort of an ad campaign, or maybe you're running an email campaign. It doesn't have to all just be bundled as one task. If you want to divide your work up into things, logical groupings, this makes a lot of sense, and you can kind of very creatively create the different buckets, right? So think of an issue type as a different bucket of like-minded work that is important for you and your team. And so I'm just going to go with the task, the events, and the content piece. But again, you're limited by your imagination, so feel free to create whatever you want. and feel free to not use or use whatever you want, right? Again, it's so customizable that you can literally do whatever you want. Okay. So that's the issue type. And I start there because fundamentally everything else now stems from here. So one of the things that I want to talk about are forms, right? So the very first problem is like we want to address signals, right? We want to address all the different inputs that are coming into us. Well, we want to capture that information, right? We want to basically create like a sign up form so that if somebody wants something from the marketing team, like let's just say there's an event, right? Let's focus in on events, right? So let's just say that we're going to be doing a World Series promotion because it's the World Series right now, and we're going to be having a World Series post World Series event, and that we're just going to be investing, right? We're going to do something really cool for our team, something very creative. And so we want somebody to submit their ideas for this event, right? Well, when you look at a form, right? I'm just going to actually click on forms over here and click create form and for events, you're going to see that I have the ability to basically create, like if you've ever signed up for like a credit card or something online, or if you ever purchased anything online, this is just the form that you fill out. And you'll notice that we have a summary, we have a description, we have an attachment. And then on the right-hand side, we have a couple of things like assignee, due date, labels, start date, right? But that's it. Like, well, what if we want to capture the venue? What if we want to capture the campaign that this is for? What if we want to capture like the dates or something like that, right? Well, we don't have that. So one of the other things that I want you to kind of look at as you're configuring your Jira here for the first time is going into your events issue type, right? We're in this events again, and you have the ability to basically create fields. And these are the different types of fields that we have. We have short text, like just think of it like a title field, right? We have a paragraph, so a bigger, more, I like to call it fatter, though it's not the appropriate word, right? But it's a bigger box. We have date fields, we have number fields, we have timestamps, we have labels, drop downs, check boxes, we can tag people, and we have URLs. So we're going to add a couple of these just to kind of make it fun, right? And so we're gonna do venue. So let's do a short text where we're gonna call this one like venue location. And this is just a text where somebody's gonna put in where the venue's at. And so you can put a display description of like location of venue if you wanted to, right? Again, I'm not very creative, as you can see, but that's it. You just hit that create button, and then all of a sudden it's going to become available, right? It's a field that's available to us, venue location. But I'll show you how it works in the forms. Now let's just say in the dropdown, we also want like resources, right? Like maybe we need like a projector, right? So let's set up like a projector. Maybe we need a computer, right? Maybe we need a mouse. Actually, let's not do this one. Let's do it as a checkbox, right? So venue resources, right? So maybe when our marketing team goes there, we want to have a projector. Maybe we need to have a computer, right? Maybe we need to have a power supply. Maybe we need a mouse, right? Stuff like that. HDMI cable, right? Things of this nature. We can hit save again, hit save there. And now we're going to have a checkbox type of field that, again, when we fill out the form, you're going to see how it all comes together. Now I'm only going to do one more. I'm going to do a date here, and I'm just going to call it like event date. And that's it. And just hit save changes. Right now, again, you're limited by your creativity. So really think about your processes. Think about the things that you do or that are important for you to capture, right? So as you're thinking about, okay, the different types of work that we want to capture, not only think about the different types of work you want to capture, but for each of those, what is the important information? And we capture those in fields. And as you can see, it's very, very easy to just pick the type from the right, and it automatically goes into the left, right? And if you don't want something, like maybe we don't care for team, you can just drag it to the right, get rid of it, it goes away, right? Maybe you don't care about like a due date because we have, I can't get rid of due date, but maybe because we do care about that event date, that's all you need. So you can customize it however you want. Now, once you have that, right, now we can kind of go and talk about forms, right? And so our forms here that we were looking at earlier, you'll notice that now, if you kind of pause here and go back a couple of minutes, you'll notice that those dates that, or those fields that we just created, they're going to be in here, right? So right underneath my summary, right underneath my description, I'm going to drop in my venue location. I'm going to drop in my venue resources, and then I'm going to drop in my event date right here. And when I do this, I'm creating a very easy to use form, which is very powerful for two reasons. Number one, it's going to feel very intuitive. So you don't have to feel like you're in this like very scary tool. It's just a very simple form. And so if anybody ever needs something from the technical team or from the marketing team, they can just come to this form and submit it. And number two, why I like this form is that this is a shareable form. You may have missed it right here, but these little ET fingers, you can click on that. And this is, oops, I got to configure my outgoing mail, but in your Jira, you won't have that problem, right? But if you click on this, you're going to get a URL, and you basically can just share this URL with anybody in your team. And so anybody can go in and basically submit, all your Jira users at least, they can go in and submit this form. And so they can bookmark it, right? And so they don't have to, yes, don't they, like, little sidebar, please tell me that these don't look like the ET fingers, because I get a lot, I bring it up as like a joke to people, but little sidebar, I really do feel like they look like ET's fingers. But in the chat, let me know if these look like ET's fingers or not. But anyways, that's the form, right? So now we saw how easy it is. And again, this scales, right? So if you have events, if you want a form for an email campaign, if you're running like a Facebook ad campaign or a TikTok ad campaign, you're going to want to create these forms so that whoever is requesting this, or maybe even internally, right? Maybe just internally, y'all just want to capture that work. You can capture this information and just very easily be able to create an input, right? An intake, if you will, so that you can capture the information. It's very, very critical. So in the chat here, let's see what we got. So we can do forms without Jira Service Management. Yes. So really good question here. So just kind of take a little sidebar on the technical conversation, right? So Jira Service Management is a sister product to Jira. And Jira Service Management also has forms. Now, I will tell you that the forms in Jira Service Management are like 10 times more powerful, but this is very true. So you don't need you don't need to have Jira Service Management to do these forms. Now, a couple of things, keep in mind that Atlassian is changing a lot of this, okay? So just what I'm about to tell you may or may not change in the future, but the forms in this template that we're using, it's part of Jira. Now, Atlassian is in a transitionary state where we're going from Jira software to just Jira. And so if you're using the traditional software templates, you're not going to find the forms there. So you do need to be in one of these business templates, like that marketing, the IT, and was the ones that we looked at earlier. So that's probably why you might not see templates, because the project that you're in, the project type, doesn't support templates. But if you're on a business type of project template, you should and will have forms. Now, I don't know if Atlassian is eventually going to bring forms to the software type of templates, but we'll see. That's TBD. Are there any forms? Are there any limits to how many forms you can create? So, or limits to the field? So, yes and no. So you are limited to the form, right? So if I come back over here back to our forms, if I were to create another form, you can create as many as you want. Right now, it's obviously going to be easier or better if you have different issue types, right? So I would I would say or recommend that based on how many issue types you have, you should have at least 1-to-1. I would not recommend creating multiple event forms, because if you were to go down that route, you are limited to the same fields. And so it wouldn't make sense to have two forms for the same issue type that have the same fields, right? So I would say, because fields are grouped at that issue type level, I would create as many forms as you have issue types, because it just makes more logical sense that way. But Jira's not going to complain. You're going to be able to create 50 of the same forms for the same issue type, just using all the same field. So it's your mileage is going to vary there. But yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about that there. All right. Yeah. This is the beautiful. I tell people this is the best thing and the worst thing about Jira is that you blink, everything changes. But it's always for the best. It's always for the best here. And I like that it says that it changes, because it keeps me frosty, and it also just means that Atlassian is always investing and trying to make the best tool possible. So now that we have forms, right? These are very powerful, right? And so your team just simply needs to go into them and then submit it, right? Now this is where I will tell you that this is where Jira gets a little confusing for a lot of people. There's a non-negotiable, right? Is it possible to add the priority field? So yes, it is. So you just have a field priority. I don't think I had it in this one, but this is why, again. So Mega, if Mega Quality, if we go back over here, right? If you go to your project settings, if you go to the issue types, and if you go into your specific issue type, there should be a priority field. If there isn't, then you can type over here, or actually what I didn't do is keep scrolling down. You can search for priority, or if you keep scrolling down, Atlassian is listening and it knows that we were thinking about priority. So you can drop in priority, you can drop in your category field, you can drop in your time tracking. We're going to use all those in this training. So I'm just going to drop them in now and just have them there. I'm going to save my changes. So now when I go to my form, and I'm going to go to the original one, I can now drop priority, right? So if you want to give the onus, right? If you want to give whoever's submitting the request that power of priority, we can do that there. Oops, I definitely went to the wrong form. Let's go to this one, right? So if you want to give that person, whoever's creating, that responsibility of selecting that priority, you can definitely do that. But also keep in mind that you could keep things on the side, not be part of the form, that you can then utilize there as well. There it is. Yes. So what does the team field do? Great question, Anna. So there's a team field that you're going to notice here. And so there's it's part of a bigger, grander scheme of things. And so up here in the navigation bar, we have something called teams, and you have the ability to create a team. Now, what I like about this is it's a very interesting thing, right? So let's just say that you had different teams, right? So let's just say we had like our marketing team, we had our design team, and we do have like our engineering team, right? So we can go in and create different teams. So I can come in here and create like the marketing team, right? And you can go in and put individuals into that team, right? And so I'm just going to create the team and make it available. What this does, though, what this marketing team does, right? It's going to show you all the work that is associated or technically assigned, and I'm going to put assign in very big air quotes, right? But it's going to show you the work that is assigned to that team. And what I like about this and why people like it is that this team field allows us to generally, or as a generalization, again, assign, I'm putting assign in very big air quotes because it's not the way Jira is intended, right? But you can assign a task to an entire team. At the end of the day, though, the most important thing, though, is at the end of the day, you have to only have one assignee. And so I'm going to go into another project that I have open here just so you can kind of see. But every item always has a single assignee. And so that is a single individual that is ultimately responsible for the task at hand. And so there is a difference. There's a fundamental difference between assigning something to the marketing team, right? So if I go to marketing, if I need my alphabet better, but I don't apparently. So let me just go marketing. It's not there. So let me just assign it to another team, right? So if I assign it to this team, there's people in there, like Bob's in that team, right? But I can then, from that team, whoever's in that AWS support, one individual can then ultimately take responsibility. So this just works really well in that sense that you can create these teams that are general buckets so that you can classify work to different teams and assign them out to different teams, or I should say farm them out to different teams. But at the end of the day, one and only one individual is ultimately going to be able to be the assignee. So that's what that team field is. And a couple more things, that team is global to your Atlassian instance. So that team is going to work for Confluence. It's going to work for your Jira Service Management. So if you're subscribed and you're buying some of the other Atlassian tools, that team field is global. So it's going to be the same team. So you can go look at your team's documentation and their tasks and put it all together. So it works really, really nicely there. So hopefully, Anna, that answered your question. Catherine's asking, are form fields unique to this project? Okay, so this is, if you remember, Catherine, from the beginning, this is why I went down this team managed project. So the team managed project that we're creating, right? So I'm going to go back into this training one, and again, I'm focusing on this team managed. Yes, the form fields are unique to that project, right? So all the fields that we're creating right now, that events venue, right? And let me just pull it up so you can see it over here, events, right? So this event date, venue resources, venue location. If you have another team, right, or another project that is also for a different marketing team and they want those same ones, unfortunately, you have to recreate these settings, okay? This is why I love company managed projects, because the fields become global And now they can be used in any project. It doesn't even need to be a marketing project. It can be any project. Even a Jira Service Management project can leverage those global fields. So this is why, again, my preference is for a company. But again, we're trying to tailor this training for marketers. And so we're trying to make this as easy as possible. But if you have that Jira technical skill, then definitely go with the company managed route so you can have those globally. Rohit says, do we have an option to create company managed projects for business projects or formally? Yes. So you do have the beginning. At the very beginning, I kind of showed it, but when you go to create a project, it's hidden. Atlassian does a good job at hiding it here, but when you go to create a project, right, you have to click on the show more, expand it, and then you can select. So it is slightly hidden. So if you're not careful, right, if you just click create, next, you're going to skip right over it, and then you're not going to be happy later. All right, so Anna's good there. Our org only allows company managed projects. So just curious how this all works. Yes. So Catherine, yes. This is great. This is really good news, Catherine. I prefer, right? This is my selfish, like as a Jira admin myself, I do this all day, right? 12 hours a day. The company one is going to give you all the features, everything unlocked. So it's the best way if you just want to take advantage of everything. But if you don't have the luxury of having dedicated Atlassian resources like a Jira admin, then it becomes tricky. It becomes more challenging, and you got to go through a lot of different hoops just to get something in here. And with these team managed projects, we don't need to go through those hoops, and it just magically works. And that's why I wanted to focus on this for this training, so you can see the magic. But there is a hard mode. Let me rephrase. There's an expert mode of using Jira if you want to. And let me know in the comments, right? If you guys do want to see kind of like a slightly harder one, this is really good feedback. I am creating this training in collaboration with Atlassian. So we were kind of just trying to figure out what was appropriate. But if you all are kind of like, hey, give me some harder stuff, give me the more expert level training, let me know, right? Because 2025 hasn't been written yet. And we definitely have the opportunity to create harder and more advanced trainings for you all. So just let me know if that's something that is of interest. We can go with that. So fun fact, team managed is managed by team members. Yes, that is a very fun fact. So team managed is literally the team, right? The individuals, you yourself watching this training, you can do all of it very, very easily. You don't need any formal Jira training. You might mess up a couple things here and there, but it's all fine. These team managed projects are very, very forgiving. Catherine, Alex always suggested. Yes, I do. Okay. The Jira we used to hear looks differently. Totally looks completely different application. So Jira is going through a transitionary period. We are Atlassian is removing or not removing oh boy, I don't even know the word. I'm reshifting. They're moving the interface, right? So what was commonly or formerly known as Jira Work Management is just not part of Jira, but all the interfaces are shifting. So depending on where you are in the cloud, you might have different, you might be in different stages, right? So your interface at one point is should and look more similar to this, but even then, a lot of this interface is going to change very, very soon as Atlassian slowly rolls out their new and updated interface, which I'm hoping really comes out before the end of the year. I do believe there's an early access that you can try it out. Okay. Yeah, and also that this is another good point. You also could be on data center, in which case I don't even know if you have these project templates because I don't spend a whole lot of time in data center. But I should have probably started that at the beginning that these are cloud instances. All right. And Edgar, we don't yes, definitely branding as Jira Unified. Not Confluence yet. So, but I will talk about it briefly, just since you asked, Edgar. But it wasn't on the schedule. But I'll kind of do an honorable mention here towards the end. I wonder if Jira is modified by the organization, so it looks different. Yeah, so you can change a couple of things, right? So you can change like the color here in the navigation. You can put your company logo. So there's some subtle tweaks that you can do. But for the most part, what you see here is what everybody sees if you're in a cloud managed project. Okay, let's keep going, right? So we have our form. So we're able to essentially fill out this form and we put the dates that we want. So let's actually put in something. Now, I was going, before I went off on this tangent, right? But very good questions, folks, right? But the summary, one of the things that confuses a lot of people is that summary equals title. And so we're just going to create, right? So post World Series party, right? And we're just going to put in a description to celebrate the winners of the World Series. In the chat, who do you think is going to win? It's looking very one way right now, but in the chat, if you want to kind of put your predictions as to who do you think is going to win the World Series, let me know in the chat there. Fun little question for y'all here this morning, right? Company is going to have a bash party. Little hat tip to Atlassian bash parties if you've ever been there, right? And so this is going to be at the Anaheim Convention Center. Another hat tip in case you guys haven't registered for Team 24. Registrations open up in about 45 days. Maybe they said December. And so, and if in case you didn't know, it's going to be at the Anaheim Convention Center. And now this is what's cool, right? So I have the venue resources. It's a checklist, so you can, it's one to many, so you can, or one or many. And so you can pick the ones that are appropriate. So let's just say we want a power supply, the computer, and a projector. Sorry, I can't spell. And then the date. So let's do April 8th, because that's, well, actually, it doesn't make sense because I'm going to stop talking about World Series is formally over on Saturday. So let's just have a party on Monday. All right. And then optionally, if somebody wants to maybe upload the design, right? Maybe somebody has like the graphics, or they have some sort of an SVG for you, or they already have some sort of a media file. They can just click on browse, give you these PNGs, give it to you, just upload it like that. They can upload many, right? So if you have a couple different things like that, you can just upload as many times as you want. You can drag and drop. So it's very easy for the end user to just drop in all those assets, right? Because you can make it, right? So that you tell your instructions, hey, drop in all the assets that I need to create this ad, right? And now you can hit submit, and then that item's going to go. Now they can submit another one, or back in Jira, I'm going to go back to my project, back to my board here, and we're going to see that our post World Series party has now officially been submitted using that business form. And again, we can name things and do things very differently. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at with that. So any questions on the forms? I know I spent a lot of times kind of talking about the forms, but it was very important for you to very important for you to all understand how easy it is for you to manage that intake, right? Because that is the foundational step. That controls the signals, that controls the noise, so that you can create the appropriate forms so that teams around you, whether it's internally or externally to you, they can all come in and submit information. But it's so important that you capture the right information. And so a lot of the investments that I usually do when I'm onboarding a team is like, okay, so let's get this form correctly, because that's, you got to put your best foot forward. Because if you're blinded to information, it makes everything else a little bit harder, right? It makes capturing the work harder, or understanding, or you make assumptions. And so it's just better to put it in the form, put it on there. One other cool little thing that I didn't show you, but this is kind of cool, right? You see that there's this required. So if you want something to be required, you just do that, and you just hit that slider. So that way, when somebody submits something, they have to give you that information. Otherwise, they don't get to hit the submit button. And so you will always be assured that you will have some data. It might not be the right data, and they might just give you bogus data, but you can kind of assure yourself that that's going to go well. Allison's got a question here. Do you have to be a licensed user to submit a form? So in Jira, every user must have a license. I don't think Atlassian has any plans to change that. So everybody that's interacting with your Jira project, whether they're submitting forms or actually working the requests as they come in, everybody needs to have a license. Now, when you contrast that with Jira Service Management, that's not the case over there. So that depends on you and your team, and again, your level of complexity. You might be able to do all of this that we're doing inside a service management project, right? You're going to get the same effect, but in that particular case, and for those particular use cases, it's free for any user in your organization to submit those forms, and those forms are a lot more dynamic. So also in the chat, if you guys are interested in like, hey, Alex, can you show us these marketing projects as a service management project? Let me know, right? Again, we're going to be together for 4 weeks. And so we got a lot of time to kind of talk about these and answer your questions here. But as you see here, when I hit create project and I click marketing, there is a marketing service management. So there is a different type of project template that you can use that's going to be more forgiving, if you will, on those licensed users. But the specific template that I picked for this particular demo everybody needs to have a license. So the the interaction with Jira is going to be very similar, whether you're JSM or Jira or just Jira. But those forms, you do get a little bit more dynamic to it. Like you can make, if I select certain fields, I can dynamically show other data, and also the forms can be submitted by anybody. They don't have to be a licensed user. All right, forms are very useful indeed. I appreciate that. Yep, yeah. So we can definitely talk about that. Let me know. I might just have for next week. I'm gonna make sure you hit that subscribe button for next week. I can have a couple of different templates ready for us, so we can just look at it. But I will be focusing on this one since this training is for Jira, right? Not Jira Service Management. But let me know, because again, my channel, there's an infinite room of possibilities. So maybe we'll make another course in a month or so. All right, Marcel says, when should a ticket be made and when a form should? Okay. So great question. So let's talk about the elephant in the room that I've been actively avoiding. So right now we've been using forms. I love the forms because you can grab this form. And again, I don't have my mail set up, but let me just see if I can configure it real quick. If everybody can close your eyes real quick for 2 seconds. Right? Everybody close your eyes. Don't look at what I'm doing. This is not important. Just doing a little sleight of hands here. If you take this item, you get a link. So I can share this with via Slack, or I can share it with specific individuals. I can put in people's names. I can share it with an entire team, right? So there's a lot of different ways to share this form, but I like this way because it's a shareable form. It looks and feels, right? So if I go back in here, it looks and feels just like a form that you're filling out on the internet. So it feels very natural. There's another option, right? You always have the ability to hit the create button. Hitting the create button is a little bit, it feels more technical, right? You have all the options, and you could accidentally make the ticket in a different project accidentally, because you're going to see a drop down of all the projects that you have access to. Okay. Now, John, you may have to teach me how to do this, because I haven't seen how that works, at least not without using plugins. But if the dynamic forms can be in the business projects, then extra heart, because that would be amazing. So John, you might have to ping me out on Slack and tell me how to do that and get that working. All right. But anyway, I don't recommend going down this create route, because if you go down this create route, mistakes can be made a lot easier, right? So any project that a user has access to, it will show up on this list. Any issue type that the user has access to, it's going to be showing up on the list. So it's a little bit more error prone. And so this is just, it's very tunneled, right? It's like you can do this and only this, and you share with whomever you need, right? So very shareable URL, easy to get to. Over here, it's not as easy. It's a little bit more technically challenging. So this is why I chose to go the form route. But everything on here is exactly the way we have it, or almost exactly the way we have it, except you see everything. So that's another thing. You have more fields, and then you have to, making fields required over here is a little bit more challenging. So there's a couple of more nuances that you got to worry about, that just, I didn't want to worry you all in the scope of this course. And so forms is going to be the easiest way to get things into Jira. So, okay. So we have something in there. We have our party, right? And now let's talk about workflows a little bit, right? So as you can see, I have my in progress and done, and this works really well, right? Like I'm just going to very quickly, now you think about it, you might have the premium. So I don't know, John, because I have the premium on this one. So, but I haven't seen it again. So just if you do see it, and we can ask Atlassian support to turn on an advanced form. So I kind of feel like that should be a thing that's just on. But yeah. Okay. So does a user need permission to view the project to be able to submit a form? That is a great question. It depends. I don't want to get a whole lot into technical details of permissions, but there is an access thing, and for each access, there's going to be like this manage roles, and then you can determine what people can do. And in here, you kind of have to go through each of these and understand what is what. But I'm going to say that a person in general, right, just without looking through these, because I don't spend a whole lot of time in team managed projects, but based on a company managed project, I will tell you that you need to have access to that project that you are submitting to, right? Otherwise, you're not going to be able to submit. Now, team managed projects have less restrictions or less customizations when it comes to what people can do. But in the company managed version of this, yes, you can 100% say, I have the ability to create, but I don't have the ability to edit or do anything else. So that is something you can tweak. But in this team managed ones, again, I'm a little less familiar. I'm not gonna lie to you all. I spend 1% of my time in team managed projects because as a Jira admin, I'm only ever in company managed projects. So I do apologize for that, but it's just the way it happens for me. All right. So let's talk about workflow here because we have just a few minutes left, and I kind of just want to give you a little bit more information, right? So now that we have this input, right, we can move these items across. So we can just move them to like when it's in progress, we can easily move it. If you have specific statuses, maybe you want like an in review status, it's very easy for you to just do this and just click the plus button and add a new status. And it's just going to be popped in right there, right? So in case you missed it, you just click the plus button and you just call it whatever you want. Like if you want like a brainstorming status, you can do a brainstorming status of the category. The categories just pick the color. Is it gray, blue, or green, right? And you just hit submit, and it's going to go and create these statuses for you. Again, this is why we love company managed projects. Team managed projects, because we can do this very easily. And it doesn't require your Jira admin to create these different columns, right? And then from in here, we can always create the thing, right? So maybe we want to create a content piece, right? So create LinkedIn LinkedIn event post for the World Series party, right? So you just hit enter, and very easily I can create things. I didn't notice that I didn't have to use the form. And so one thing that I do want to talk about is that the form is very appropriate when you have like external users. Even for internal it'll work, but it's very formal. But if you're like in the heat of that moment, you're just like, hey, we need to create a bunch of work. Well, these create buttons here, they work very, very well and very, very dynamically. You can just very, very quickly just create work. And so when we come back next week, my board's going to be full of stuff. It's going to have a lot of things in here because I just wanted to kind of show you how to, as part of this training, right? Like the process and how to organize your work, because there's a bunch of different ways to view all of this, right? There's so many different ways. We're going to talk about lists and calendars and timelines, right? We're going to go into detail into all of this. So make sure you're coming back week after week because we're just scratching the surface here, folks. We're just getting started with these with these business templates to really help you as a marketer shine, right? And so over here we're gonna have like let's just say we have a task of hold up, we have a question here. Hold up, we have a few questions. Let me pause here. Alex needs to practice his team managed projects. Yes, I'm taking a test on the Jira administrator test. There's questions for team managed projects. Is there a good solution to move an issue from one team to another? For instance, one team finishes the issue and goes to team two. So that's an interesting question, Aaron. So this is passing of the baton. There's a couple of different ways to go about it, and we are going to be talking about this throughout this series of automation rules, right? And so let's just say that we have something like this, right? Let's just say like we have a quality check, right? And let's just say that this is an in progress status for this, right? So as we're creating our LinkedIn post, it's under review. We're going to move it to quality check. Well, in quality check, I'm going to show you again. You got to come back, right? I'm not trying to sound like a sleazy salesperson, but we are running out of time here. We have the ability to automatically, through something called an automation rule, assign the work or pass the baton, right? So I can move it to another team or I can give it to another assignee. So I'm going to show you how all that works. But yes, it is possible, and it's something we're going to be able to do. Can you link a service desk issues to project issues? I don't think for these team managed ones, but in the company managed ones, and especially if you use the software template, it is very possible. But I don't think it's going to be possible here. I don't think I have the ability to manipulate what is shown here. But if you're not on expert mode, Karina, you definitely can use a software template. I recommend you have the Kanban template. And in that software Kanban template, you're going to be able to pick or point to other projects, and you can bring in the service desk issues like that. But to do a straight link, so I think what you're asking though is, can I just physically link them? Then the answer is yes. So you can click this link issue here, and I'm going to show you in another tab over here. Let me just go back into my project here. I'm going to show you. I have a service management project. Let me find one real quick. Service management, the CLSSD. This is a service management project, which apparently doesn't have any issues in it. Maybe not. So maybe I can't show you. But yes, so the idea is you just type in the CSDL or whatever it was, and you will find them. So you can physically link them that way. So hopefully that answers your question. Is there any solution if we want to have marketing project type but still work in sprints? So yes and no, Christina. So if you want to work in sprints, the only way to have sprints is one very specific project template, and that is going to be a software type, right? So if we're looking at the templates, you're going to want a software and you're going to want Scrum. Now, everything that I've done here with respect to creating those issue types, right? Those events, whatever issue types you want. The only thing you don't have is forms. You lose forms right now if you go down this route, but you gain sprints. And so there's some trade-offs that you have to do. Again, Atlassian is aggressively working to synergize these things so that the experiences are all the same. I'm not privileged to know if forms are eventually going to come to the software template. Fingers crossed they do, because it's a very powerful thing. And double fingers crossed that the JSM type of form comes over to Jira, because that's even more powerful. But we can only dream here. But yeah, so if you want sprints, this is the only way to do it, is you have to be in a Scrum template. Is there a way of having like a week focus board backlog view for teams set weekly goals to avoid making the board full and messy? Yes. So let's talk about that for a second. But Carmen, we will kind of focus that more next week. But we do have like these group buys over here. And one of the things that I'm going to talk about are categories. So I can create categories, right? So I can do something like this, where it's like this week, right? And I can create a category of like green. And then I'm gonna do a like next week category. And so you can populate these. Oops, I'm too zoomed in. I can't see my buttons here, right? And so when you create these categories, okay, yeah, sure, let's update it. There you go. Next week, here we go. Right. So when you have categories, right, this is a workaround. But when I'm back in the board view, notice that I'm now grouped by my category. So it's very possible, Carmen, for you to create these categories where you're organizing your work by week. So there's a couple of different tips and tricks. Again, make sure you're coming back to these, because this is there's some customizations here. Obviously, in these team managed ones, you're going to have the most restrictions. We're going to have the most limitations. But your mileage is going to vary, again, based on the template that you pick. Good thing this is in Jira for sales. All right. Is in my task, I used to write instructions and description about the subtask we need to create. This repeat many times. Is there a way to fix this instruction in the form? Great question. So I don't know about team managed projects, but in company managed projects for these fields, but keep in mind these are global, you do have the ability to put default values in them. But let's go take a look. I do believe if we come over here, let's go to the form actually and see if the form does it. I don't think it's gonna let me here. No, I don't see an option to do it in here. But let's see if we can do it at the issue type level and at the field level. So I'm gonna come over here and do like venue location. I'm gonna expand this. Yep. So you can put like a default test like Anaheim. Hit save. Let's see when we look at the form if it has it. So we're gonna look at our form here. Let's look at a preview. And let's see if it gives it to us. No, it's not giving it to us. So I would say no, but there is an ability for you to put default values, but it's going to be effective when you come hit the create button. So if I hit the create button, I go to my events, there should be, oh, there's the Anaheim right there. So you can put the default something in there. So if you wanted to put something in your description, you can definitely do that. And it's just going to be always there. Just the user is going to have to override it. So in the service management, though, in the form for service management, you 100% can put like instructions as well, or a description underneath, and it'll kind of give you instructions on what to do. So mega quality, you might want to consider the service management template as well. All right. I'll actually create tasks in this project to remind of some of the topics in the next few training sessions. Yes, we definitely should. All right. So folks, with that said, we're basically out of time. So make sure, I'm just going to come back over here for some next steps. Right. So next week, we're going to go into project planning and scheduling. So next week, we're going to put tasks, we're going to put a lot of work into it. And I'm going to show you now more of the dynamics of how to physically use Jira. I'm going to give you a lot of tips and tricks there. And so While we're waiting for next week, make sure you one register for the course next week. It's going to be every single week for the next 3 more weeks. But follow me on LinkedIn, right? If you enjoyed this training, make sure you go on LinkedIn, follow me, and that way I do make announcements of when these courses are coming. So make sure you go on there. If you need like one-on-one help, I am also available. So in that, if you scan that QR code, I'm available to answer any questions that you have. Like if you're stuck with Jira, you need some help with Jira. Basically, there's that. And then there's free courses and paid courses. There's merch stores. There's a bunch of different things. Make sure you subscribe to the channel as well. And we will see you all next week. So thank you for being here. And I hope you enjoyed it. Bye.